Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
My seminar is on Vedic culture and ISKCON today. Maybe some of you saw this book, which glimpses of traditional Indian life. Did any of you read this? Who's read it? Please raise your hand. Those who didn't read it, please do so, and then you'll get a broader overall vision of what I'm talking about. Mostly devotees who read this book, they think, well, what a very nice way of life that is being described in there. And from this we can understand that people, they're not very happy in the present culture that they're living in. And actually one doesn't have to be very intelligent to understand that this modern way of life is completely abominable. Life in the material world is miserable. That is an axiom. Well, it's not, and everyone doesn't understand. But anyway, as Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, the life in the material world is miserable. Now it's interesting that this is one of the teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, because it would appear to be an axiom that it wouldn't need to be stated. But most conditioned souls are so foolish that they think it's actually a very happy place. No. But the modern way of life is so exceptionally nasty that anyone of even slightly awakened intelligence can understand that life as we are living it now is miserable. As is stated by Shukadeva Goswami in Bhagavatam, this Kali Yuga is an ocean of bad qualities, faults. This was Shukadeva's summary, his summarizing statement. Previous to this, he had described so many specific bad qualities of Kali Yuga. Prajase, Bhakshishanti, Lecharajanyarupina, that very low class people will take the position of leaders and devour, or in other words, totally exploit the citizens. Dampati viruchi hetu. People will get married just because of sex attraction, with no other consideration. If we point this out as a fault of Kali Yuga, people will be surprised. Because they think, well, that's what marriage is all about. You fall in love with someone, I love you. I love you. Let's get married. Okay. But according to Vedic culture, this is a total misconception. There are so many factors to be considered before man and woman are united in marriage. It says age, temperament, family background, astrological matching, then means of income, so many things. But in the modern age, they just stare at the stars in the sky and think, how romantic, and they get married. Some violin is playing in the background. And they're surprised there are so many divorces. Because marriage is entered into on a superficial basis. And then lavanya keshadharanam, people will be very interested in hairstyles. They will think that beauty is, one should have very beautiful hair. And so there are so many hairdressing salons where they shape your hair in all different ways. And if you like, they can make it green also. This is another symptom of Kali Yuga, because hair is simply used for sex attraction. Which is why in our Vaishnava culture, men shave their heads and women cover theirs. So another symptom, Britahimsa, meaningless violence. That people are so degraded that they take pleasure in giving pain to others. There are so many symptoms are described by Shukadeva Goswami, which we can see actually manifest in modern society. No one is happy. Even if we study statistics, we'll find that something like 90% of people in the so-called developed, advanced countries, they take some kind of psychiatric treatment or psychological analysis during their lifetime. 3 out of every 5 marriages in places like Germany, England and California, they're finished within 5 years. In several states in the USA, children going to school are searched for weapons at the gate. So these are the symptoms of a very unhappy and imbalanced society. These are the measurable symptoms, and then we find in our day-to-day life that one person cannot trust another, that cheating, lying, stealing are part of ordinary life, that we practically expect the politicians and leaders to be corrupt and rogues and rascals. What to speak of genocide, and it's in the latter half of actually throughout the 20th century, genocide just became, there were so many massive killings. So many, I mean, when you start to think about it, you could go on for days just describing all the discrepancies in modern society. That there's the rivers, the air, even the rain is polluted. The food we eat is full of all poison which has been put there in the name of advanced modern agriculture. Everyone is full of anxiety all the time. People have to work so hard just to get some money to live. But even then, living in the cities, you can't breathe fresh air, it's all polluted. The food you eat it's not fresh, and like I said, it's full of all kinds of chemicals. And even the water, you have to pay for some water which is supposed to be drinkable. Even that you're not sure. And therefore people, they're living a very unnatural way of life. And therefore there are so many diseases. Just like this cancer, it's a very common disease. And people have no dignity. Even supposedly leading members of society, it's quite common for them to be drunk in public. And people are so foolish that they pay to, already they're breathing in poison there, but they pay money, which they work hard for, to poison themselves more by smoking cigarettes. The only motive in modern society is get some money and enjoy your senses. And like I was saying, people have no sense of dignity or self-worth. That young girls, they'll become prostitutes, or they'll have their photo in some magazine naked. And you'll find, I'm seeing here in Russia that I'm going on the planes, and it's a very common thing that the businessmen who are supposed to be like, I don't know, it's supposed to be some kind of high class, but they'll just, most of them, they're openly reading pornographic magazines. So it's a very, very horrible condition in society. And some people, they have different ideas how to improve this. There are many different social and psychological theories. And the politicians are always trying to adjust this situation to improve it. It's like in America, they may be thinking that everything is wonderful, but there's just one problem, and his name is Osama bin Laden. Or in Russia, they might be thinking that actually life is very nice, we just need a little bit more money and kill everyone in Chechnya, and then everything will be wonderful. So we're always thinking that we'll make some adjustment or some new economic policy, and then everything will be very nice. However, according to Shukdev Goswami, and according to all Vaishnava acharyas, simply making an adjustment in our plans for material happiness will not bring the desired result. Shukdev Goswami says, Kale dosha nidhe rajan asti eko mahan guna kirtanad eva krishnasya mukta sangha parang vrajit. Give the translation. Shukdev Goswami says that this Kali Yuga, my dear King Parikshit, is an ocean of faults. But there is one great saving quality. What is that? That by chanting the names of Krishna, one can be saved from all this nonsense and attain the highest destination. Or as is succinctly stated in the Brihanaradiya Purana, what is that? Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastreva, Nastreva, Nastreva Gatiranyatha. Translation? So this is the answer to the horrible civilization that we live in. To chant Hare Krishna and to study Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishnai Swadhamo Bhagate Dharma Jnana Vidhi Saha Kalo Nashta Drishamesha Purana Kodhunoditaha. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has gone to, he is the abode of, or he is the overlord, he is the very proprietor of knowledge and religion. He went to his own abode, but knowledge and religion, they are reposed in this Kali Yuga in Srimad Bhagavatam. So people in Kali Yuga, they're very much in darkness, but they will get light from the Bhagavad Purana, which is just like the sun. So it was on the basis of chanting Hare Krishna and understanding the philosophy of Krishna consciousness on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam, that teaches the highest theistic concept. Savai pung sang paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. The topmost religion is that service which is offered to the transcendent Lord, which is unmotivated and uninterrupted, and only this kind of religious practice can fully satisfy the self. So this is it. This is the process. This is what to do. Chant Hare Krishna. Understand Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, which is based on the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, which is summarized as Sarvadhaman Parittaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja. Krishna says, surrender everything to me. So it's very simple and straightforward. The basic understanding of Krishna consciousness is very simple. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are all His servants. We should surrender to Him, serve Him, and chant His holy names. So the basic philosophical understanding, very simple. And the process is also very simple. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. But there are some problems. Problem means that actually we have a lot of problems. There's no problem in the process of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is completely pure. But we are not very pure. So even when we take to Krishna consciousness, we find that there are so many obstacles. Now the obstacles come from our own misconceptions, from our own material attachments, and the obstacles may come also from the environment that we find ourselves in. In other words, or to give an example, it's very common that that someone takes to Krishna consciousness but their husband or wife doesn't. Or someone young man is trying very sincerely to be Krishna conscious, but there may be so many young women in the summer walking around with practically no clothes on. Or practicing Krishna consciousness, but his friends and family members say, "Oh, there's a very good movie coming on TV. You should watch this with us." So, unless one is extremely strong, it will be difficult to be Krishna conscious in these circumstances. So, of course, we should try to get good association and endeavor very seriously in Krishna consciousness. And by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, one can be Krishna conscious in any circumstances. However, it's easy to understand that the present society we live in is not at all conducive. It's not natural. It's not inherently conducive for becoming Krishna conscious. And the way people are raised in modern society is actually antithetical to Krishna consciousness. For instance, one reason people don't understand, or people in general don't understand or accept our Krishna conscious philosophy very easily, is because they have no training in understanding the very basic point that there's a difference between the body and the soul. In modern society, the philosophical training, or not exactly philosophy, but conceptual training, and the behavioral training is absolutely antithetical to Krishna consciousness. Now this is why Srila Prabhupada, he was not merely a religious teacher. Prabhupada brought Krishna consciousness to the West, that we all know. But he had a far greater aim than even many of his followers, or a far greater aim than many people realize. Srila Prabhupada's aim was not so much to add Krishna consciousness to the modern way of life as to change the whole way of life to be conducive to Krishna consciousness. Now, we can practice Krishna consciousness within modern society, and you are all living proof of that. But you can understand that if we were all living in a society like the society described in this book, that it would be much more conducive for us to be Krishna conscious. Just like this book describes the men in the fields as they're walking behind their bulls, plowing the fields, they're chanting bhajans, or they're singing songs to Krishna. Or the boatman, as he's plying his boat across the river, will be singing some names of Krishna. And then when the day's work is over, everyone comes together and sees some drama of Krishna Leela, or they hear some recitation of Ramayana, or they sing kirtan together. And everyone does that. Everyone rises early in the morning and does puja and chanting. And throughout the day, everyone is talking of Krishna, chanting the names of Krishna. And in the evening like this, chanting or hearing about Krishna. And if you like that, all the day is full of Krishna consciousness, then at night they'll also be dreaming of Krishna. So it's a very different situation to the one we find ourselves in the present age. That even if people want to be Krishna conscious, they think, well, where am I going to have time to chant 16 rounds? There are many devotees like that. Especially in the West, or the modernized, very modern, hectic way of life, where people have to work long hours and it takes them a long time to go to work. So people get up in the morning and then they have to get their kids ready to go to school, and they have to rush off to work, and then they come home late at night and they're exhausted. And they're so physically and mentally drained from their hard work that even if they have time to chant Hare Krishna, they don't have the energy to do so, in many cases. So as Prabhupada said, that modern leaders will force you to work like hogs and dogs and asses. Sure. In all ways, the modern society kills the spiritual instincts of its members. So Prabhupada could see this, and therefore he envisaged a changed society whereby people didn't have to live the way they're living now, that they could live a more simple, natural way of life and remember Krishna by adopting this Vaishnava way of life. Now we'll see Prabhupada has written about Vaishnava culture, Vedic culture. He's written about them extensively in his books. Now Prabhupada wasn't writing these things simply as a kind of cultural or anthropological as a study. Prabhupada was very serious about instituting this kind of way of life, because he could see that without adopting this Vedic culture, it will be very difficult for people either to take to or to remain in Krishna consciousness. So Vedic culture means that way of life which is favorable for cultivating Krishna consciousness. That way of life which is given in the Shastra. Now we have so many theories of social organization, which in the 20th century were the two dominating theories were capitalism and communism, which are two blanket terms. There are many different strains of communistic and capitalistic theory. And although they both purport to be for the good of human society, actually they're both based on the same mistake. They're both based on the mistake of identifying the body as the self. If we mistake the body to be the self, then we think our self-interest will only be in bodily gratification. So all the different theories for social improvement or individual improvement which are given by materialistic people, they're all ultimately completely useless because they all miss the point. Prabhupada gave the simple example of cleaning or polishing the cage without feeding the bird inside, so the bird died. Or there's a saying in English, barking up the wrong tree. In other words, a dog chases a cat. The cat runs into the... Do you have this saying in Russian? No. The cat runs into the copse, where the clump of trees, and climbs up one tree. So the dog runs in and runs to the bottom of the tree and is barking up the tree. But actually the cat's in another tree. This is called barking up the wrong tree, making some basic mistake. So in the same way, modern society is based on this basic mistake. Therefore, Prabhupada wanted to remove this basic mistake, and therefore he promoted the distribution of his books, widespread distribution of his books. Now, sometimes devotees wonder, well, what's the use of distributing all these books? We distribute so many books, but not many people become devotees. Actually, it's wonderful that people are becoming devotees by reading Prabhupada's books. But Prabhupada stated that one thing is for the devotees, for people to become devotees and to read the books. But another reason that we're distributing these books is to give general education to the populace. The idea is to, by mass distribution of these books, is to shift the conceptual paradigm of society, so that gradually the people in society can accept the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And then when they can accept the philosophy, then they can accept the way of life of Krishna consciousness, or the practice. So it's a very great challenge ahead for the devotees of Krishna consciousness movement. Of course, we can't just by waving a magic wand change the whole society into Vedic society. That society is very different from that of the modern age, where the society is run by pious kings. And one Maharaj Yudhishthira is worth more than dozens of Duma members. Of course, Maharaj Yudhishthira is very famous, but there were in history many pious kings who were not so famous. By saying that, I just want to make the point that Maharaj Yudhishthira is not unique. He is maybe the apotheosis of Vedic kinghood, or the ideal, you could say, of Vedic kinghood. But there were many, many pious kings in the history of India and of the world. And as you can understand from this book, Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life, even without pious kings, to a large extent that culture was going on in many ways until quite recently, and even today. But actually it's become even if people want to practice Krishna consciousness now, it's become very difficult in India, even in India. Just like there are two very wonderful young men I know who are from Sri Rangam, which is one of the most holy place, one of the most important centers of Vishnu worship in India. And they're both very, very devoted and very pure souls. They're both, just early 20s. Cousins, actually. And the only thing they want to do is to worship the Lord. They're trained to do that and to chant beautiful prayers in His honor. But they're both working in jobs. One is a computer programmer and probably the other one is too. Because the government took away all the land which was their income. They have no means of income. They have elder parents to look after. They'll get married. They need money to support themselves. So like this, the old system which was there, that the Brahmins, they would have some income, that was taken away, and in this way, even though the people who have fully qualified and desirous simply to serve the Lord, they have no means to do so because of the modern demoniac system. So if we're talking about changing the whole society, it's from our point of view, it's very difficult to see how that can be possible. But everything is possible by the grace of Krishna. Prabhupada was once asked that, how can this whole demoniac society change? The devotee said that these demons are so powerful. That's a fact. They control all the financial institutions, the political systems, the mass media. The educational system is controlled by people who want to maintain the status quo. So the demons are very powerful. And most of our devotees, they can't, they put on odd socks and all kinds of funny things. Odd socks means you take one from one set and one from the other.
Devotees.
Yeah, it's just an example to show. Most of our devotees are very simple and pure-hearted people who are not, they're not very suited for standing up to big, powerful demons. So, Prabhupada, when he heard that how can these powerful demons be overcome, Prabhupada simply laughed. Prabhupada said, one kick from Krishna and they can all be finished immediately. So that's a very big scale thing we're talking about changing the whole society. And that can come about, and Prabhupada was very positive that it will come about by spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, by inducing more and more people to chant the holy names, and by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books in all the different languages of the world, in every town and village and home, by pushing on the preaching, by having festivals and Sunday programs and prasad distribution, in so many ways there are to preach Krishna consciousness. So like this is the macro vision for changing the world into Krishna consciousness. Now, apart from that, I want to talk in the next few days about how we can apply Vedic culture in our own lives for the benefit of our own Krishna consciousness. You may say, well, how can I take to Vedic culture? I'm living at home with the rest of my family who are all meat eaters. Of course, different people are in different circumstances. But in the next few days I want to discuss how we can incorporate basic principles of Vedic culture into our lives, and that will be to our benefit. As much as we can take this up, that much it will benefit us. Of course, you are all already taking this up and doing this to a large extent. The ultimate point of Vedic culture is to take to Krishna consciousness, Vaishnavism. So you're already doing that. Apart from that, you're also taking up many of the other points of Vedic culture. Mm-hmm. Accepting a guru, that is an essential point of Vedic culture. Bowing down before the deities, bowing down before senior personalities, wearing Vaishnav dress, rising early in the morning, bathing early in the morning, daily, bathing after passing stool. These are all things that you've learned since coming to Krishna consciousness. So these are all basic points of Vedic and Vaishnav culture. So in the next few days I'm going to be speaking more about why we do these things, how they benefit us, and some other points we can pick up and understand. So these are the points I want to discuss in the next few days. That first of all, to define what is culture and how it affects us. And then how our philosophy, our outlook on life, and the values that we adopt or imbibe affect our behavior.
Values of life? Affect?
Our behavior.
Effect?
How our philosophy, our outlook, and the values that we imbibe or adopt affect our behavior. Then you may have noticed that I'm using terms, sometimes saying Vedic culture, saying Vaishnav culture. So I want to define these terms a little bit more. What is Varnashram culture, Vedic culture, Vaishnav culture, Indian culture, Hindu culture, all these different terms. What are the meanings of these? And how they measure up against modern culture. Now I noticed that among the seminars being given, two, one by Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu and another by Audarya Dham Prabhu, they're on family life. But I would also like to, within this seminar, speak about family values according to traditional Indian society. If those of you who have read that book, Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life, will understand, although it's not explicitly stated, it's implied that family values, the importance of family life. I'd like to discuss why devotees need to adopt Vedic culture. What are some practical difficulties in our doing so? Srila Prabhupada's vision of agricultural communities. Now I can see that many of you are very assiduously taking notes, so I can presume from this that you're thinking actually about the essence of what I'm saying. So that's good. We want you to think, to apply our intelligence in understanding Krishna consciousness. So naturally, if we're thinking about all these points, then different queries may arise in our minds, and there may be different points that we want to discuss further for further elucidation. So we should have some discussion and questions and answers also. However, I'm not going to take questions and answers until the end of the seminar. That means we'll have 4 days of myself speaking and then questions and answers and discussion on the last day, fully dedicated to that. The reason for that is that I have planned out certain things to say, and I want to present it within a certain format. So if we have questions at the end of each day and you ask something which is about the next day's topic, then everything gets out of order, so to speak. So please go on taking notes, and if you have any questions, you can just jot them down, and then, or not just questions, but any points that maybe you want to make some comments, and then on the last day we'll give time for discussing all these things. It's actually very important. When we're talking about culture, we're talking about the whole way we live our lives. And I'm personally very convinced about this. I'm personally very convinced about the need of our devotees to take up this Vedic culture more and more. I think like many devotees, the background to my coming to Krishna consciousness was a complete distaste for the whole way of life that I was brought up in. So having seen or lived in such a bad society and understanding that Krishna consciousness can give us the real way of life, then naturally we're very interested to take this up and spread it more and more. And by the grace of Prabhupada, I also had the opportunity to live within Vaishnav culture for many years. So I've accepted as a service for myself to go into this more deeply and try to understand it more, and to try to teach that to others. That I'm doing in various, or attempting to do in various ways. One is by giving seminars like this. Another way is by encouraging devotees, if possible, that they can spend at least some time in India in a situation where they can imbibe some of this culture. Of course, it's not only going to India. You have to be in the right consciousness to learn. You won't learn anything about Vedic culture by going to India and spending most of your time at the lassi bar. Then another way I'm trying to relay some of this is also this knowledge is by writing